Good afternoon. Welcome to Business 360, your complete view of the stories driving business, markets, and the economy. I'm Apa Ongpin, and this is the Bilyonaryo News Channel. The proposed 2027 national budget is under the microscope, 7.2 trillion pesos, with a flood control funding making a comeback. The People's Budget Coalition weighs in. A record 85 peso daily wage hike is approved for minimum wage earners in Metro Manila. Meralco stays bullish on growth despite weather and geopolitical headwinds as MVP eyes a fourth quarter close for its big solar merger. And a surprise, Iglesia ni Cristo rally brings EDSA to a standstill with the mass action expected to last 3 days. The government has just unveiled its proposed budget for 2027, a record 7.2 trillion pesos, around 6% bigger than this year's. And this time, flood control funding is back. We take a closer look at the proposed 2027 budget with AJ Montesa, co-convener of the People's Budget Coalition. Hi AJ, welcome to Business 360. Before we get into the budget, Q1 growth came in at its slowest in years, and based on the National Budget Memorandum number 158, the DBCC, essentially our country's economic managers, the economic cluster, has walked back its targets from where the People's Budget Coalition sits. How worried should we be? And which sectors are feeling it hardest?
Hi, Apa. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on your program. So that's a very important context when the DBM released the National Budget Memorandum number 158, which outlined the fiscal assumptions and the macroeconomic projections. It included the 7.2 trillion, and it's really important to note where our economy is in that context because, yes, 7.2 trillion is a record number, but we always have to remember the backdrop of measuring it as a percentage of GDP, for example. So at the start of the administration in 2022, the BBM administration had forecasted or targeted 6.5 to 8% growth. And at this point, we're now projecting 3.5 to 4% growth. And in the next 2 years, that's around 4 to 5%. So our growth is a lot more muted now. And that budget, therefore, is in the backdrop of a weak economy. So that 7.2 trillion that we're talking about, we have to really ask, is that something that will be delivering social services to the people? Is that something that will be invested in strategic infrastructure to make our economy more competitive? And is that something that will be responsive to the economic and global headwinds like the oil crisis, the energy crisis, and even looming food shortages in the future?
Yeah, well, as a government economic manager, you would know that government spending has a direct effect on GDP. So, they need to spend to sort of pump prime the economy in a way. But really, lack of infrastructure spending was considered a major cause for the contraction in GDP growth in 2026 so far.
Right, that's correct, Apa. The lack of growth in the first quarter of 2026 and even the latter half of 2025 really was driven by sort of a chilling effect because the government was now afraid of spending the money that it had allocated because there was outcry against the flood control scandal. And when we think about it, it's correct to point out that the government needs to be spending the money, but at the same time, it really was just a correction of what had been happening for the past 3 or 4 years already. So as early as 2022, and when we analyzed the data, there were red flags dating as far back as 2019. There had been already red flags when it came to infrastructure and DPWH budget. So even if the government had been spending the money back then, there were questions on whether this is actually spent properly, whether this is going to the right priorities, the right strategies, the right targets, or is it going to politicians' pockets? And the flood control scandal just exposed the systemic corruption that had already been taking root. And there's just a market correction that's happening right now. So we really need to clean up everything on that front to ensure that the money that we're investing, that we're putting into the budget, actually goes to the place where it needs to be.
Your group, the People's Budget Coalition, is an alliance of different civil society groups, business groups, researchers, and grassroots organizations. This year, the civil society groups were given a formal, still limited, but formal role in the budget process, including observer status in the House and full transparency of the budget at every stage from the National Economic Plan, Expenditure Plan onwards. Can you tell our viewers what that engagement actually looked like over the past year and where the limits were?
Right. So that's an interesting story. When the flood control scandal came out last year, it was right after the president's SONA. So it coincided with the preparation of the National Expenditure Program. And by that time, the House, supposedly the House of Representatives, was already supposed to start kicking off its budget deliberations and budget hearings. So at the time, because of the outrage, if you can recall, that there was a change in the speakership. There was a change in the committee chairmanship in the Committee on Appropriations. And back then, the House passed a resolution that they would include civil society as observers. Back then, they claimed that this was the first time that this was actually happening, but it's not the first time. Members of our coalition recall that prior to the pandemic in the early 2010s and late 2000s, civil society had been invited before. But because of the pandemic, things sort of changed, the practices sort of changed, and that's why a lot of corruption had gone unnoticed. They were able to hold hearings almost in secret, without observers, without minutes, and that's where the insertions came in. So because of that, because of the flood control scandal being revealed, that's when they decided to bring civil society back. So we got invited as observers in the House, which means that we were able to attend the public hearings. But our assessment of that was sort of mixed. There were a lot of hearings that we didn't get official invites. For example, there was sort of a small committee on the budget amendments that we didn't get invited to. We only learned that there was a live stream as it was happening. So I think they're still working out how to properly engage civil society. I think the main difference is in the Senate, where the Senate chair on the Finance Committee that handles the budget was Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. So under his leadership, he did institutionalize, for example, a transparency portal for the Senate, where all the presentations, all the budget documents were posted on the Senate website. He held a hearing where he invited civil society not just to be observers, but to actually speak and to provide technical inputs to the budget process. So that was very encouraging. I think from the Senate process onwards up until the BICAM, we were more encouraged by the process there. And I think now that the House and the Senate have a feel for how they can engage civil society, we're hopeful that they can continue this. We're really encouraged that Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is the Senate President, and we hope that his mandate for transparency in the budget process will continue in this budget cycle.
Great. Were you allowed into the bicameral, which used to be a closed-door meeting? So
Yeah,
this
that's
time,
a good point. It used to be closed door. We were anticipating that we would be invited in person as well, but unfortunately, I think that didn't work out. So all we did was we monitored the live stream. So even though it didn't meet our expectation, I think it's still worth acknowledging that the live stream of the BICAM is still a huge accomplishment that was only made possible because we kept on making rallying cries to Congress and to the Senate that they need to open the budget process to restore trust. They can't do business as usual as they tackle the budget.
this expanded role came after the flood control scandal. Now, having tracked the 2026 budget from the National Expenditure Plan onward, what's your read? Is it cleaner?
I think cleaner, since cleaner is a relative term, I would say it is an improvement. The problem is there's a saying that the bar was on the floor. The budget the previous year, the 2025 budget, a lot of analysts are saying it was the most corrupt budget in history. So
Yeah.
if you're coming from that, any improvement, of course, is cleaner. It's an improvement. So yes, there was improvement in the budget. But still, we found by the end of the entire process, we found at least 541 billion pesos worth of red flags. So these are not corruption per se, but the red flags that we spotted include things like hard pork. So these are infrastructure projects, hard projects that really need scrutiny. So we have been mobilizing our volunteers to really check these projects and see how they're implemented on the ground. We are getting volunteers from church groups, from different civil society groups to monitor and see if these infrastructure projects are actually being implemented. Then we found the soft pork. So these are the ayuda programs. Ayuda programs, they look good. They're politically sexy. Because the politician can get involved in the handing out of these ayuda programs. But at the end of the day, we flag them because they do tend to become patronage driven. So they're used to buy votes, for example. They're used to curry favor with the voters, not really to forward any developmental goals or to provide a systemic social security system like PhilHealth, for example, as a contrast. So we flagged those items. And then the final flag that we also raised was on the unprogrammed appropriations, which we call shadow pork. So the shadow pork, it's shadow because it almost functions as a parallel budget where it doesn't get the same level of scrutiny because it's unprogrammed. So it's not itemized to the same granularity as the rest of the budget. And so it became sort of the modus operandi of how legislators could have their insertions to either hard pork or soft pork without raising those flags. So because we flagged those, the president had to react and he had to veto some line items in the unprogrammed appropriations. But still, the remaining items, when we totaled all of them, that's still 541 billion pesos worth of red flags that now that the budget for 2026 is being implemented, it really takes a lot of civil society, private sector, businesses, church groups to really monitor how this budget is being implemented right now.
Yeah, monitoring, that should be the job of the Commission on Audit. I mean, why are we forced to do it?
I'm not sure. I mean, well, civil society does play an important role. So, for example, when the hearings started taking place on the infrastructure, the ICI, the Commission on Infrastructure, we did submit, for example, our findings, the anomalies that we found on the duplicated projects, on the insertions. We compiled all of this data. We used a lot of statistical analysis. We used some AI to generate some insights. And then we forwarded this to the members of the committee. So I think it goes to show that independent observer civil society is very important because the problem is if it's only government talking to each other, there could be a tendency for collusion among government actors. If kumikita sila, di ba? Pwedeng mag-usap-usap and then since there's no outside observer, then that's where they tend to have their insertions, that's where they tend to have their corruption. So it's always important to have civil society, independent media, private sector groups always watching and making sure that everything is above board.
Okay, well, that's a funny situation. But I guess in terms of our development as a nation, we're forced to do this. Now, let's go branch by branch. How did the executive do on transparency, especially the Department of Budget and Management?
I think our experience now with the DBM is they really are determined to restore trust in the budget process. There's a new secretary, but the sort of reform started when it was Acting Secretary Rolly Toledo who started implementing more transparency and participation. And now with the new secretary, Kim Robert De Leon, we've had some good talks with him. He's very open to having civil society as active participants in the budget process. So we're not waiting anymore for the budget hearings in Congress. As early as now, we were invited to, for example, technical budget hearings. So even before the National Expenditure Program is being prepared, civil society already has a role to play. So we're very hopeful that the DBM continues to expand its push for transparency and participation for civil society.
Okay, so how would you rate the transparency and cooperation of the House and the Senate? You already said that Gatchalian gets your vote, right?
Right. So Senator Sherwin, I think, really passes with flying colors. I think there's not a lot that we could ask for more from him. I hope he does continue the work as the Senate President. I think For the House, we did have some good touch points, for example, with the CPBRD, which is the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department, which does work on taxes and budget in the House. They were very open with us. They really tried to consult us. But I think there is a need for better participation because in the House, since we didn't really have a role as resource persons, we didn't really have the ability to speak during budget hearings, unlike in other technical hearings of other legislation. Many civil society observers can also provide technical inputs. This time in the budget, we were wondering why we weren't given that opportunity. So there are really a lot of points for improvement in the House. So I think that's something that hopefully they can continue to work on.
Yeah. Some of the people behind your analysis are also economists and data scientists. What did you actually use to go through this vast amount of data, the multi-trillion peso budget? Did artificial intelligence and other progressive data tools play a part?
Yeah, we do have some good friends, some partners. If you know them, they're from BetterGov PH. They are a group of civic tech volunteers who really have done a lot of work in integrating new technology like AI into the process of really analyzing the data. So they were, we are the group that has been fondly called the angry nerds because although these nerds are very introverted, we're really not fond of going in public hearings and everything. We do the technical work of analyzing the data using technology to find red flags, and they did a lot of the work in, for example, mapping the insertions, finding networks, and all of these things, doing that kind of analysis. So yes, that was part of it. But also, I think it's very important to acknowledge the different sectors that we work with are representing, for example, labor groups, health workers, different sectors, education advocates, transport advocates, who, although they're not, the high-tech space, they do have knowledge that's particular to their sector, particular to the department, and they also help spot red flags. They also help ask questions to keep the departments and agencies honest. So I think we need more of these people to be more visible in the budget process, and hopefully, again, Congress will allow space for this kind of participation in the budget process.
Well, hats off to the angry nerds. Huh? The executive submits the budget, the 2027 budget, in just a few months. So what are your stakes going into that cycle? What do you want to see fixed? And how has the DBM been responding to the pressure so far?
That's a very good question. This is a really important and critical juncture at this point. The president will deliver his SONA in a few weeks. And of course, he will try to frame his accomplishments. But as I mentioned at the start of the interview, if we look back to where we started in the BBM admin, we have already missed our targets, our growth targets. For example, our deficit was supposed to be at around 3% by this time, but still it's above 5%. We're not going to hit the 3% level by the end of the term, and maybe even by 2030. Our debt to GDP was supposed to be below 60%, but now we're above 63%, and that doesn't seem to be going down with the pronounced deficit. And the impact of that on the budget is that we are now paying more in debt service burden or debt service interest payments, which means that that's money that's being taken away from essential social services. It's being taken away from healthcare. It's money that could have been spent on more classrooms and education. So that is really what the stakes are when it comes to this budget. And the corruption that was exposed had a chilling effect. So I think the most important thing right now is that the administration has to restore trust in the process. It has to restore trust in the institutions. Because without that trust, then it's very difficult to legislate a strategic or an innovative budget. So once that trust is restored, then we can start talking about the finer technical details of the budget and how it's spent. So that's really what our goal is, to shine a light more on the budget process, to involve more stakeholders so that we can have a more transparent and active participatory process when it comes to the budget cycle, and a budget that is really more focused on providing essential services for the people, especially in times of economic headwinds, rather than a patronage-driven or a corruption-riddled budget.
Okay. Finally, you don't do this alone. How does the People's Budget Coalition hope to work with its partners going forward, including new partners? So you have, of course, the private sector groups, the business groups, the civic tech builders. Is everyone pushing in the same direction, or do you each have your own agendas?
Well, of course, everyone has their own, I wouldn't say agendas, but everyone has their own interests. So, of course, some groups are more invested in seeing budget towards health, budget towards education. But I think what binds us all is we really are invested in a budget that is for the people, that's for the Philippine economy, it's for Philippine development, rather than a parochial patronage-driven system. So we're all trying to incorporate our advocacies to achieve that change. Again, from the private sector, of course, everyone from the private sector would like to reduce the red tape, would like to reduce the corruption. In civil society, we would like to see better social outcomes. And then, of course, in the civic tech space, they would like to see more tech being introduced to make the budget cleaner, more transparent, and more innovative. So that's all coming together. Again, we're really volunteer driven. We're really driven by the people who are just passionate about this thing. And we hope that we can collaborate more with the decision makers, like the DBM, like the House of Representatives, the chairs of the committee, the Senate President, and even the President himself. If they really truly are committed to addressing this issue and restoring trust, then they have to realize that they can't do it on their own. They can't do it in their political silos. They really have to give this power back to the people to restore the trust.
Wow, that's great. Thank you very much, AJ Montesa, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Apa, for having me on the program, and good afternoon.
Minimum wage earners in Metro Manila are getting an 85 peso daily pay hike. Labor Secretary Francis Tolentino says this is the highest in NCR history. The wage hike will be released in 2 tranches, a 60 peso hike taking effect on July 19, followed by an additional 25 pesos in January next year. Once fully implemented, the daily minimum wage in the non-agriculture sector will rise from 695 to 780 pesos, benefiting an estimated 1.1 million minimum wage earners. Coming up, Senator Alan Cayetano is on the way to the INC rally at EDSA White Plains. That story and more on Business 360. Welcome back to Business 360. I'm Apa Ongpin. Meralco sees growth for the next months, amid potential headwinds from weather impact and ongoing geopolitical tension. Ches Sulit has these details.
The Manila Electric Company is optimistic about its growth for the next months. At the sidelines of the Meralco annual stockholders meeting, Meralco Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Ultra Bilyonaryo Manny V. Pangilinan said the company's financial outlook remains promising. Despite headwinds including the rainy season and the ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, Pangilinan is positive the full-year profits will be ahead of last year's. Earlier this year, the company had reported its 2025 profit grew to 50.6 billion pesos, 12% higher than 2024. Pangilinan cited the distribution utilities volumes have rebounded for May and June on a year-to-date basis. Meralco's power generation arm MGen also posted promising growth following the energization of the Mterra Solar Phase 1, supplying 250 megawatts of power to the Luzon grid. Pangilinan also shared Meralco's plans to help the continued tight supply conditions the Visayas grid is currently facing right now.
There's excess turbines from when we made the investment in chromite. So the plan is to build the excess turbines, not in Batangas, but in Visayas, maybe in Mindanao as well. I think there are 4 of them. So how they will split it between Visayas and Mindanao, I don't know yet. But clearly, Visayas needs more power. So we will probably build the gas plants definitely in the Visayas, maybe a portion in Mindanao.
Earlier this week, the SP New Energy Corporation disclosed it was moving forward with its backdoor listing through MGen Renewable Energy or MGreen, allocating funds for asset infusion and related advisory fees. Pangilinan said he is also hopeful the merger may be completed soon, encouraging investments for MGreen.
Tagal ko na hinihintay yan. Pero medyo nagka-agree na ng valuation. Sabi ko, just do it, di ba? Kasi related party naman kayo di ba? So, ayun, may agreement sa valuation. So, just, hopefully by the 4th quarter, tapos na yun. Di ba?
Meanwhile, Meralco also announced the appointment of its new independent directors, including LH Paragon Group Chairman and CEO Bernie Liu and Ateneo de Manila University Chairperson Bernadine C. For Business 360, Che Suli, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Megaworld says its office lease rentals renewals jumped 46% in the first half of 2026, a sign of steady corporate demand. The property developer renewed about 122,000 square meters of office space during the 6-month period. Megaworld also said 24 of its office towers across the country are now fully leased. The company plans to add more office space this year in Bulacan, Bacolod, and Davao. Luxury retailer SSI Group has formally put forward its next board lineup ahead of its July stockholders meeting. The company is seeking shareholder approval to elect former BPI Capital President Junie Veloso as an independent director. Veloso brings more than 3 decades of experience in banking and capital markets, including leadership roles at BPI Capital and HSBC Philippines. He would succeed Carlo Katigbak, who is stepping down after reaching the SEC's term limit for independent directors. Katigbak will remain with the company as special advisor to the board. In its disclosure, SSI Group thanked Katigbak, saying he helped strengthen its corporate governance. The Philippine Stock Exchange Index ends this month with a bloodbath. The PSCI shed more than 1.5%, dragged down by financials. All indices ended in the red. BDO suffered the steepest fall at more than 4%. Other big banks also saw losses. Asian markets capped a record-breaking quarter even as a late-month chip sell-off cooled the rally. Japan's Nikkei 225 closed up just over 0.8%, but still notched a powerful quarter. It's up roughly 72% over the past year. South Korea's Kospi rose just under a full percent, capping an eye-popping second quarter gain of about 68%. This marks its best quarter since 1998. The index has now nearly doubled year to date, but the yen slipped to levels not seen in 40 years, weakening to around 162 against the dollar. And there's growing speculation that Japan could intervene in the market at any time. U.S. stocks ended significantly higher as tensions in the Middle East eased. The Dow Jones reached a record closing high, while the S&P 500 and NASDAQ also posted strong gains. Investors are now turning their focus to second quarter earnings. Most S&P 500 companies are set to begin reporting second quarter results after mid-July. Coming up, Senator Alan Cayetano is on the way to the INC rally at EDSA White Plains. That story and more on Business 360. Welcome back to Business 360. I'm Apa Ongpin. An estimated 15,000 members of the Iglesia ni Cristo staged a protest at the EDSA People Power Monument this morning and along EDSA White Plains, bringing traffic to a standstill. They are protesting in support of INC member Senator Rodante Marcoleta, who faces a plunder case. Senator Alan Cayetano is also on the way to EDSA White Plains. Congressman Mike Defensor went to the rally at the People Power Monument, as well as Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste. President Bongbong Marcos is keeping a watch on the Iglesia ni Cristo rally from inside Malacanang. We now go to Ivy Reyes, who is on the line. Ivy?
Yes, Apa, President Bongbong Marcos canceled his public engagements this morning, but pushed through with scheduled engagements with the Korean and American ambassadors to the Philippines, Lee Sang-hwa and Lee Lipton, inside the Malacanang Palace. The Presidential Communications Office confirmed in a message this morning that PBBM didn't show up in separate events in Manila Bay and Makati at 9 a.m. and 12 noon earlier this day due to the emergency rally of the religious group Iglesia ni Cristo along EDSA. Malacanang said the President is monitoring the situation in EDSA and is within the compound at the moment. Apa, the palace questioned why President Bongbong Marcos is the subject of the Iglesia ni Cristo's rally, despite the fact that it is the Office of the Ombudsman who's handling the case. Malacanang said they respect the stance of the religious group and is listening to their calls for transparency and accountability, but the palace stressed that rallies won't resolve Senator Rodante Marcoleta's plunder raps that have yet to be filed. The palace also clarified that Senator Marcoleta himself admitted the 75 million peso campaign donation for him during the 2025 elections. Apa, the palace also called the assembly illegal and said they cannot say if there were lapses in the intelligence capabilities of the government because they knew about the rally at dawn this morning. Meanwhile, Malacanang responded to Vice President Sara Duterte, who said that the sentiments of the religious group in EDSA is reflective of the poor governance of the Marcos leadership. According to the palace, the vice president cannot point fingers when the administration of her father never led any probe into corruption in the entire 6-year term of former President Rodrigo Duterte. Apa, the palace sees no threats in this rally, despite the barricaded gates of Malacanang, because as of now, only the JP Laurel Gate remains open, and both the Arlegui and Solano gates are closed. And as for the president's visit or working visit in Canada from July 1 to 5, PBBM will push through and will fly at around 8 p.m. tomorrow. As of now, that's all the updates here at the palace. Apa?
Thank you for that report, Ivy Reyes. The INC rally will reportedly last for 3 days. A source told Bilyonaryo News Channel that protesters have been asked to bring sleeping clothes. Commuters are advised to plan ahead and consider alternate routes, with EDSA likely to remain blocked by heavy traffic. Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste is pushing for a congressional reinvestigation into the alleged flood control scandal. Leviste first attended the Iglesia ni Cristo rally along EDSA before heading to the House of Representatives to file a resolution seeking to resume the chamber's investigation into the issue. He said the Cabral files, testimonies from former DPWH officials, and the claims of the so-called Maleta boys should not be forgotten. The call comes after the House probe was suspended last year following the creation of the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, which has since been dissolved. Senate President Sherwin Gatchalian is taking a wait-and-see approach on the possible plunder case against Senator Rodante Marcoleta. Gatchalian refused to speculate on the matter, including whether the Senate would grant custody to Marcoleta if a warrant is issued. This comes after the Ombudsman said Marcoleta could face a plunder case over the alleged receipt of 75 million pesos in campaign donations during the 2025 elections. Marcoleta has denied the allegations, saying the possible case is politically motivated to silence his exposés on the alleged flood control scandal and to prevent him from taking part in the upcoming impeachment trial. Baguio Mayor Benjamin Magalong says the government's flood control probe is moving slowly and that a dedicated body should handle it. Magalong said authorities are looking into more than 240,000 allegedly anomalous infrastructure projects.
Well, from the perspective of a former investigator, pabagal. No? Talaga kasi nang tinitignan natin dito, 240,000 na anomalous projects. That is around, yun ang initial na estimate namin since 2016. Tapos out of that number, mga 30,000 ang flood control projects na potentially anomalous din. At the rate of about, siguro kung ako tatanungin nyo sa aking experience, mabilis na yung 2 months per case. Kaya talagang kailangan bubuhos talaga. Ibig ko sabihin, kailangan ng manpower, kailangan ng iba't ibang mga ahensya, law enforcement, investigative unit na talaga ma-involve dito kung gusto nila talagang magkaroon talaga ng maayos na outcome. Talaga yung mararamdaman ng taong bayan.
We'll be right back. You're watching Business 360. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas expects June inflation to settle between 6 and 7%. The BSP said lower oil prices and cheaper food like rice and meat could help temper price increases this month. But higher electricity rates and vegetable prices may offset those gains. The BSP said it will keep a close eye on incoming data and global developments that could affect prices, including the Middle East crisis. The official June figure is out next week. In May, inflation eased to 6.8%. Conflicting statements emerged between the United States and Iran over whether talks will be held in Qatar this week. U.S. President Donald Trump said Iranian and American officials will meet in Doha on Tuesday at Iran's request. The White House said U.S. envoys will travel to Qatar for discussions, but Iran's foreign ministry denied any scheduled meeting with U.S. officials and said no talks are planned. Iran said it will only discuss implementing an existing memorandum of understanding with mediators in Qatar. The Philippines has secured a major funding package from the World Bank to help provide cheaper electricity and strengthen the country's energy security. The World Bank has approved more than $1 billion or about 61 billion pesos in financing. It will support the development of renewable energy sources, including wind, solar, and geothermal power. Part of the funding will also improve water security by addressing funding gaps and boosting the technical capacity of local water utilities. Ayala-led AC Mobility is expanding its nationwide charging network to support the growing number of electric vehicle users. Gia Baroga brings us up to speed.
AC Mobility of the Bilyonaryo Zobel de Ayala family is doubling down on its commitment to support the country's growing electric vehicle sector. The company says the Philippine EV spine now has more than 200 charging locations, connecting Pagudpud in the north all the way to Pagadian in the south. They also continue to create charging experiences that meet drivers' needs.
We are also expanding our network through partnerships with key industry players. Recently, we launched a partnership with our Ayala Group sibling, ASEN. And this is with whom we are building charging hubs powered by 100% renewable energy.
The all-new BYD Sea Lion 7.
and Chinese EV giant BYD, distributed locally by AC Mobility, continues to make waves in the Philippine auto industry, though being seen as a serious contender against long-established car brands. BYD says their customers' needs remain its focus.
BYD's main objective is to offer products to the consumer. The consumer now has a lot of options, and we're filling that gap that the customers need to look for, and what they're looking for and what they want. And that's where BYD comes in.
BYD Cars Philippines' newest offering is this Sea Lion 7, an all-electric performance SUV built for fast moments and smooth drives. The model further expands BYD's local lineup as it strengthens its position in the growing new energy vehicle segment.
Based on reports, BYD held on to its third-place ranking in Philippine vehicle sales during the first 4 months of 2026. Based on reports, BYD held on to its third-place ranking in Philippine vehicle sales during the first 4 months of 2026. The achievement was first revealed early this year, pushing traditional auto players Suzuki, Ford, and Nissan lower in the sales rankings. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
The Philippine government is moving to bring consular services closer to Filipinos living in the southeastern United States. U.S. correspondent Paul Garilao has the details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has announced the government's plan to expand the Philippines' diplomatic presence overseas, including plans to establish a new Philippine Consulate General in Miami, Florida.
To serve Filipinos in the U.S., Southeast, and in the Caribbean. These new missions provide vital, accessible consular services to protect our nationals overseas.
The Miami Consulate remains in the planning stage, with its opening date and location yet to be announced. The United States currently has 7 Philippine Consulates General, all operating under the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. The new Miami post would expand access to passport, civil registry, notarial, and other consular services in the region. While an honorary Philippine consul operates in Jacksonville, the office provides limited consular assistance and does not offer the full range of services available at the Philippine Consulate General. For now, many Filipinos in the region must wait for occasional consular outreach missions or travel to other states to access government services. For Filipino-American Darren Mendoza, who operates 3 restaurants in South Florida, the new consulate would bring essential government services closer to the community.
So it's a big thing for the Miamians, kumbaga na Filipino that lives in Miami. Kasi number one, we don't have to travel to New York, to DC, or even in Tampa to do, for example, Red Ribbon or passport, dual citizenship ng Philippines.
Meanwhile, Marilu Makatangay knows firsthand what the absence of a full consulate can mean. She assisted her late husband during his years as the Philippines' honorary consul in Miami.
As far as the Philippine government is concerned, I'm glad they're putting up one because as far as trade and businesses are concerned, it will be a very good place, to open a consulate here because they can, do the trade talks and stuff like that with the Philippine government.
For Mendoza, the benefits go beyond consular services. He believes a full-time consulate could also help showcase Filipino culture to a wider audience.
Makakapag-help na kami ng event na malaki dito sa to introduce actually yung ating culture, which we've been doing here in Miami, but with the support of the Philippine Consulate, we can actually expand yung event namin to show dito in Miami what's really Filipino culture, what's Philippine food.
Meanwhile, Makatangay says a Philippine Consulate General in Miami would also better serve thousands of Filipino seafarers who pass through the city, known as the cruise capital of the world. She recalls helping Filipino crew members after a ship fire, an experience she says underscored the need for a full-time consular presence during emergencies.
The ones who died, the problem was they were leaving the families without money. And the ones that were burnt could not work in the ship anymore. If we would have helped them and they would have listened to us at that time, I could have gotten for them at least maybe $2-3 million. Okay? Pero they ended up, because they didn't believe us and they thought the cruise ships were doing better, their employers were doing better, they ended up with maybe $40,000-$50,000. So if we have representation here, at least they have somewhere to go to.
With the opening of Philippine Consulate General here in Miami, more Filipinos who live in Florida and the nearby region are expected to benefit from more accessible consular services, bringing the government assistance closer to the Filipino community in the region. Paul Garilao for Bilyonaryo News Channel, Miami, Florida.
Global demand for ube is growing, but Philippine production is struggling to keep up. A new USDA study finds the country is growing less of the purple yam, even as global demand soars. Among the problems, few improved varieties, poor post-harvest facilities, and no national product standards. And the demand is only growing. Ube is booming worldwide in desserts, baked goods, and plant-based products. The study says ube is already a global name, but without a stronger supply chain, the Philippines could lose out on the demand that it built. Thousands of Filipinos and Filipino Americans filled the streets of Houston, Texas, as the Kalayaan Festival turned the city into a celebration of Philippine culture. But beyond the music, food, and dancing, the community also rallied to help earthquake victims back home. Cheryl Picho has that story.
In Houston, Filipinos gathered this weekend as the Kalayaan Festival brought the spirit of the Philippines to life, celebrating Philippine Independence Day in full color and sound. The one-day celebration transformed the city into a vibrant cultural showcase, featuring traditional Filipino cuisine, music, dance, and community gatherings from across the diaspora.
It's a fantastic opportunity just for everyone to come together, to be reminded of their Filipino heritage and the culture that we all share together as a people.
One of the standout moments of the event came from Filipina singer Rachel Alejandro, who brought her signature energy to the Houston stage. She says over the years, the day has become more than just a celebration of independence.
Philippine Independence Day is one of the days that I love to. I know it's about like independence from the colonization and all that, but for me, it's evolved into something more. And I think that it's the day for us to, you know, even if we're so far away from home, it's our one day to remember who we are.
The smell of adobo, lumpia, and barbecue may be drawing people in, but attendants say they're here for more than just the food. Events like this Kalayaan celebration offer a chance to reconnect with their roots, share traditions with the next generation, and celebrate the freedom that shaped the nation's history.
This is what it's all about, being Filipino. Coming from the Philippines at a very young age, I depended on my parents, my loved ones, to teach me about my culture, to expose me all to the wonderful things it is to be Filipino. So now living in Texas and not being around my immediate family, this has become my family.
Beyond the performances and festivities, organizers are also supporting those in need. Among those leading local relief efforts are Gawad Kalinga Houston and Houston Royal Oaks Lions Club, both raising funds to support victims of the recent earthquake in Mindanao.
The funds that we're going to get will be helping in whatever needs that will be identified, especially maybe in rebuilding some schools that have been affected.
GK volunteers has been they are on the ground as we speak, and they are helping with providing food, clothing, and other medical necessities for those people that has been displaced and for people that really needs some help at this time.
Cultural dancing, elaborate fashion shows, and exciting performances kept the energy alive late into the evening.
Seeing them dancing with the flowers, I said, you know what, I did that on stage when I was in grade school, you know, and I want my nieces and nephews as well. I actually brought them the performance performing right now, today. And I told them I want them to embrace our culture because I'm very proud to be Filipino.
For the Filipino community in Houston, Kalayaan is a reminder that culture, connection, and compassion can all share the same stage. Cheryl Picshow, Bilyonaryo News Channel, Houston, Texas.
And that's Business 360. We'll keep tracking the moves that matter across markets, policy, and the economy. I'm Apa Ongpin. Thank you for joining us. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.